Good afternoon, all. We'll give folks just a couple of minutes to trickle on in. Good afternoon, Alex. Howdy, sunshine.
Yeah.
Hello to Lisa's keyboard, who said she stepped away for a minute. Nancy, Commissioner Rosen, Mr. Salzenberg, are you, sir, well rested?
I wouldn't say that, but I am here.
Right. I don't think I qualified as bright-eyed or bushy-tailed either. So, well, we're
What time did you all get to bed till last night? When did it wrap up?
11:34 is when it ended. So I forgot to commend our leader for being ahead of schedule, because his drop dead was midnight, so he did pretty well.
We did cancel a whole agenda item, so.
Well, I'm not evaluating the methodology, just the results. So, indeed. Let's see. We'll give it till 12:04, 12:05, something like that, and then we'll get rolling. Well, I don't think.
Did we hear from anyone who said they would not be able to attend?
Well, I got an auto reply from Brenda Kelly saying she was out through the 15th. That's about all. So, speaking of which, Alex, I don't suppose by chance you were able to unearth the minutes from the last meeting.
No. No.
Okay. I did not emphasize that this was an outer order meeting that was happening a week early, but that tends to be our Christmas tradition, right? To the extent we have one. All right. Well, let's at least call this to order such that it is at the moment. We are short a quorum, so let's not make any earth-shattering decisions until we have one. This is the December 22 meeting of the City of Charlottesville Housing Advisory Committee. This committee has been well, is in the process of being disbanded and reconstituted. So this is the last meeting of the hack under its current membership. So here we are. Welcome. For the record, we've established that our usual secretary is not in, and we do not have the most recent meeting's minutes, but most of, well, we're not actually picking up all of those action items anyway, so we are where we are. Who else we have running in here? Oh, it looks like we're approaching a quorum. Good. My thought and purpose for this meeting was that we haven't been tasked recently with the provision of any housing advice in particular, but we had a couple of items that were still left over, and we might want to have a discussion about wrapping up this body, what we want to pass forward to the new body, and what we may want to have little things pushed out that were mostly completed per our tasks, just to get them for cleanliness sake. This is a combined advisory committee meeting and a policy subcommittee meeting. They were sort of noticed as being one following the other at 12 and 1. I don't know what sort of violence we do to the open meeting laws if we start the policy subcommittee meeting a little before 1, if we don't have a full hour's worth of work. I guess I'm willing to take the heater sanctions for that in the event that happens, but here we are. So we don't have minutes. I think that considering as long as we've been out of touch, it might make sense for us to go around and do a little check-in and then look at various localities updates and talk about wrapping this this entity up. Does that make sense? I'm going to take that as a yes. So, and at the top of the meeting, I'd like to issue a congratulations to S. Lisa. Can you clarify, please? Are you actually in the big chair, or have you just been invested but don't actually pick up the sword until January 1? How does that work?
I am in the big chair as of December the 8th. I had my first board meeting this morning, actually.
Oh, well, you're still with us. You have not apparently pulled out your hair.
All is well.
It does not seem to be going gray, so we'll see. we'll see how that is next December. But how do you like it so far? Good, good. It's you're gonna have a pretty busy year, I think. Particularly since this market wasn't like prior markets, and next year ain't going to be like this year. So anyhow, anyone else have updates of that nature and check-ins on matters? Sunshine?
Am I starting off?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Well, yes,
just
Lisa
quick-
started off, but yes.
Just quickly, just catching up where we are in our work. If you haven't been by Friendship Court recently, the construction is continuing to move along rapidly. The townhomes, the buildings closest to Monticello should be open pending, any delays, unforeseen delays, but should be open in the May to June timeframe. And then the multifamily building will be opening up October, November next year. And then we are in the final throes of fundraising for the Community Resource Center, which is a replacement for the community center and installation of a new early learning center on site as well. Assuming that funding comes together, as I hope, we'll start construction for that in April or May, also in that same area. There'll be a very, very complex construction site. And then phase 2 at Friendship Court would start construction probably sometime in January 24-ish. You just have to basically enough time for residents to move out of, once the new buildings are open for residents to move into those. We are planning on 2 LIHTC applications in March. One is the Maca Street project, the other is the Park Street Christian Church project. And we are starting construction in May, probably at this point, on Hickory Hope Apartments, which is our multifamily apartment project as part of the Habitat redevelopment of Southwood. That'll be 121 apartments that we will, yeah, like I said, start construction in May is our goal. And then lots of other things in various stages of the hopper, but nothing, necessarily public at this point. And maybe I'll just provide also, because I don't see a UVA rep, but just so you know, the RFQ process for the UVA land wrapped up in September. They announced 3 finalist teams for each of the 2 sites, one in the city, one in the county. They were and Piedmont Housing Alliance, and the team that we pulled together is a finalist in both of those sites. We were told at the time that the RFP, which is the sort of invited stage to provide proposals, would be released in October. We've now had 3 delays in that, so we don't have a solid date, but last communication I had was they thought it would be in January. The RFP would be released. So we're still waiting on that to happen. I think that is all I have at the moment.
Thank you, sir. Yes, both of our both Alice and her backup were elsewhere this week at the university. Thank you.
Actually,
Really
Phil, I
important.
just remembered I have one more thing to share, which is on the Piedmont Community Land Trust side. We have 1 project underway on the Prospect Avenue neighborhood, in Fifield neighborhood in the Prospect Avenue. We have 5 homes that we acquired last year that we are doing renovations on, and the hope is to sell those in the price range of about $150 to $170 per home. Once renovations are complete, they were in pretty poor states of repair, so renovations are pretty extensive. We'll also be putting solar on the roofs as well and doing some significant energy efficiency upgrades. So the end goal is that those residents will have very low utility bills in addition to having new homes. And we are prioritizing local residents from within the Fifield neighborhood to find home buyers to either that are currently living in the Fifield neighborhood who have been recently displaced in one way or another. And then we closed on in the county and about 14 new community land trust homes in partnership with Stanley Martin as part of a couple of their subdivisions, where we stepped in to take over what would have been their mandated affordable homes that in the county. If you remember, they have a loophole in their system so that if a developer says they're going to do affordable, they have a 30 to 60 day window, and if they can't find a buyer in that time frame, they are allowed to sell it at market rate. So the Community Land Trust has stepped in to be the intermediary to ensure that none of those get lost. And we've been successful in that in the last year, closing on 14, as I said.
So those are lots on which they are going to build.
No, they
No,
are
they're
already built and they're already sold. So they build them as part of, and they're townhomes. So they're as part of their collective development, and 10% of the units they built were required to be affordable.
Gotcha. Fantastic. Yeah, and you left that out. So, all right. Great. Rory, you want to provide an update on the machinations of the Planning Commission, that mysterious body?
Sure, I guess. There's maybe not a ton to report. We recommended a CIP last night, which has quite a bit of funds for specific projects. It bumps the CAF up to 1.5 million or so, but not really in increased funds. It's just that the vibrant community funds are being moved over into the same process. The zoning rewrite is well underway. We should start to see drafts of things like zoning maps starting in January. It looks like right now they're anticipating a decent bit of bonuses for adding affordable housing. So we'll see how that plays out.
Right. And I'll say, I think that now that it's actually underway, the zoning rewrite calendar is pretty aggressive. Considering, I mean, essentially they're going to roll the whole thing out in less than 4 months, which that ain't bad. I mean, it took us a long time to get here. Alex, anything on the city side that you can supplement out on that or on the doings in your neighborhood there?
Yeah, we are currently reviewing part of that zoning rewrite this week with the consultant, especially the section that deals with inclusionary zoning. So we are having a discussion with them this week to review their recommendations and schedules. And hopefully after that discussion, then there will be additional meetings with the city council or the planning commission as we move forward with the process. We have our HOPS grant program publications out, and essentially those are the housing related fund is different from the CAF fund. I just want to clarify that. It's a housing related funds that used to be under Department of Human Services. In other words, it's designed for housing operations and things like that. So that bucket of money rather has been moved to Office of Community Solutions. We are soliciting applications right now. It's going to close at the end of the month. So if you know anybody out there, a nonprofit organization that is looking for funding for housing operations, this is the time to submit the application.
You've got a link on the department's page?
Yeah, it's on the website.
What's the deadline on those?
It's December 30th.
Oh.
It's at the end of the month.
Get on it. Gotcha. So, who else we have? Mr. Schuyler, I see you there, circled in a halo behind of light behind you, angelically. How?
That's the only thing angelic.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, what a misrepresentation.
That's right. Just very quickly, a lot of the discussion at the HAC focuses on units, and we focus on the people who live in those units. And in conjunction with the UVA Equity Center, we released the Orange Dot 5.0, which talks about the number of struggling families in our community. And when I published the first Orange Dot report in 2011, there were 29% of Charlottesville's families that did not earn enough to be self-sufficient. And according to the latest data, it is now 19%, which is still 1 out of every 5 families, which is too many. But we are making progress. So that's the good news. We still have an enormous racial wealth gap and income gap. 47% of Black families make less than $35,000 a year compared to 11% of white families. And so we just need to remain laser focused on making sure that people are not left behind in our economy and that they can take advantage of the opportunities that are around us and then afford the housing that everybody is working so hard to put on the ground. And then as far as Network to Work is concerned, we were very fortunate. We just completed a 2-year grant from the governor to see if Network to Work can work in other places. And based on that, the General Assembly has decided that Network to Work should be on the ground from Petersburg to Harrisonburg. And so we are working on standing up Network to Work, strengthening it here in Charlottesville and the region, which is of interest to you all, but also getting it fully up and running in Richmond, Petersburg, and Harrisonburg.
So that's essentially generating a regional operation, although, I mean,
Right,
depending on the
'cause, you know,
reach of each of those, depending on the reach of each of those nodes.
Yeah. So if you live, near Afton, you might just as soon go to Waynesboro to get a job as opposed to coming to Charlottesville. And so with the Harrisonburg region included, it would include, employers in Waynesboro, the new Amazon facility, that they're building over there. And if you live in the eastern end of Louisa, you might be inclined to drive to Richmond for your work as opposed to driving to Charlottesville. So, employers are regional. And so this approach would make it so that, people can find opportunities kind of no matter what their circumstance. So, and as it relates to housing, obviously, we're really focused on trying to boost people's income so they can afford the housing, because housing keeps getting more expensive. And so the amount of money you have to earn in order to afford that housing keeps going up. And, fortunately, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on, employment wise in the Charlottesville region, including what I would think of as kind of apprenticeship light in the healthcare field, where you get hired first, then you get trained, which answers the biggest conundrum, which is how do I earn more skills while I'm working in my crappy job so that I can be made more valuable? And it's a conundrum that many working families can't overcome. And the answer has been, well, we'll hire you first at this higher wage, then we'll give you the skills that you need, then you can earn enough to support your family. And that is a sea change in how skills development is done around here. And it's an enormous opportunity that we are working very hard to make sure that folks can capture.
Right. So let me ask, are you the one driving the bus on the expansion?
Well, I mean, there are lots of people on the bus. We all have our hand on the wheel,
right?
which is why the bus careens from one side of the road to the other.
I got you.
Fortunately, nobody is tapping the brakes too hard, so a lot of feet on the accelerators too. But it flowed a lot out of the Pipelines and Pathways Working Group with UVA, which is how does UVA fill these unfilled positions? And this conundrum that we have faced with our job seekers over the number of years was one of the things that was like a light bulb went off. And people said, well, man, if we wait for people to be trained before we hire them, we just will not be able to hire enough people to serve the patients that we are serving. And so it kind of changed the dynamic a little bit. And I'd like to think we played some role in that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you can sleep when you're dead. Good Lord. All right. Let's see. Anyone else want to jump in with where you're at these days? Nancy, are you with us?
Sure, I am. Thank you for all of the great work that I'm hearing. I haven't been able to come to the meeting for a couple of times, and it's just great and inspiring to see all the work that you guys are doing. And excuse me, like Ridge, I work with the people who are going to be in those houses, and the Hope House is functioning well. We have single moms and kids right now, and we have 2 moms who are scheduled to graduate from PVCC very soon, one in May. And we are just working really, really hard. The families are thriving, and we look for a very great and thriving future for them. So thank you for the opportunity and the support. Hope House is definitely hands-on. Yesterday, I had a call from one of the moms, and okay, so she's the single mom of 3 kids. She works full-time, and she was going to PVC full-time. And she was just kind of having a moment of a meltdown. Oh my goodness, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know. And I was able to be there for her and to support her and just really talk her through all of that. So Hope House is definitely, a hands-on, accessible help for the people in real time, because sometimes you just need that helping hand. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Nancy. I guess that brings us to Joe. There you are.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so we're rocking and rolling. we continue to expand and grow in terms of the number of subsidy and vouchers that we're able to issue. And the hardest part is really keeping up in terms of infrastructure, i.e. staffing. So we are, rocking and rolling, housing a lot of folks, obviously with inventory being a little less available for folks that have barriers to housing. It's taken us a little bit longer on average to house folks that come through our doors. But I am encouraged to hear all of the, current and future, expansion opportunities for affordable housing. So that's awesome. So.
Great. Thank you, sir.
And just to reiterate that all the projects that we have in our pipeline, we 100% accept vouchers. We're not one of those landlords that gets in the way of that. So that's part of my hope, and is for in general across the spectrum, both in the county and the city, is to increase that capacity.
That's awesome, Sunshine. That sounds great.
Thank you, sir. Counselor Payne, I'm sure you have plenty of matters to report on as you juggle the 8 or 9 balls you keep in the air every moment.
I'll just be brief, but I think the big ones are the best time of year. Budget season is just beginning. Housing wise, I expect some big conversations will be where the next several years we're at a little over $10 million a year in housing investments. But there's still some work to be done to ensure that in out years that level is still at $10 million. That's not currently reflected in the budget, as well as some initial discussions this budget cycle about how can the city prepare to fund the West Haven phase of public housing redevelopment. That's something that the city has not yet begun to do preparations on in terms of how we're going to afford that. The Housing Authority is estimating that may be about $15 million. The city matching funds that may be necessary in order to make that phase of public housing redevelopment happen. We'll have discussions, I would expect, about allocation of year-end surplus, as well as remaining ARPA money that will hopefully include some housing investments from both of those pots of money. As Roy mentioned, in January, we're expecting initial zoning rewrite information to come out and dive into that. It is a fast timeline, but I'm very hopeful that we're able to meet that and not have that can kick down the road too much further. I think those are the biggest. Oh, and of course, the application deadline for the new hack has passed and applications came in. I expect the city is going to need to do some serious work figuring out how we actually stand up and begin to implement both the hack and CAF allocations process that were recommended in our housing strategy. And I have a little bit of concern that this year may still include some growing pains and gray areas in terms of how we're going to implement that. But we will see how that develops.
So are you speaking in part to the, well, I mean, there are several sort of aspects to that with the growing pains and the CAF allocations and how to get that structured and up and running and developing the relatively integrated, transparent process as being one of many. Is that what you're?
Yes, and that in combination with that, how that lines up with the upcoming LIHTC application deadlines next year, as well as the hack, that component of it. I'm unsure whether we got enough applications to seat a quorum for that currently, and
yeah, that could be concerning. Alex, you may want to dig into the archives there. We have an existing LIHTC committee that was composed of ad hoc hack members. In fact, there was an occasion that got folded into the allocations committee, but there is a city order out there for a LIHTC committee that is required, and the CAF the hack allocation subcommittee took on that role, but in the first couple of years that I was on the hack, well, at least in 1 year, that at one point when we realized we had to have it, that involved Stacy Pethiak calling 3 members of the hack who hadn't applied for anything and said, "Congratulations, you're the LIHTC committee. Let's get this organized." So we may have a mechanism, and there are some guidelines, although they're brief, in that thing that we might be able to put in front of the allocations people to give them a little bit of a heads up. I wish I could, I can probably put my hands on it, but that goes back years. I mean, we have a mechanism, it's just not very good, is what I'm saying, in the absence of the hack subcommittee, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and then finally, just I guess directly, the concern I have with the constituting the new hack is, on the city's end, there's been conversations around, how do we figure out how we actually establish a land bank, land acquisition strategies, begin implementing some of the other things in our housing strategy. One of the holdups has been, okay, we're going to wait until these new processes come online before we go through that in a systematic way. But if it continues to be delayed, I mean, it's just a frustrating situation where we can't just continually delay implementing some of these things that we could begin to take some steps doing if that, if we're not getting enough applications to do a quorum, and how that lines up with the upcoming budget cycle. So, there's just some urgency to actually implementing policies that process delays are frustrating.
Right. Forehead meets keyboard. Ridge.
Just very quickly, bootstrapping off of the discussion about the housing authority and redevelopment. We are working very closely with John Sayles and the Housing Authority to make sure that residents are getting opportunities to be hired to do the redevelopment work. And I'm very happy that Section 3 seems to finally be working where the residents can get jobs starting as general laborers and work their way up the ladder in skilled trades. And so that has really we've really tightened that up, and tip the hat to John Sayles for really pushing that. But the dream has always been that as these redevelopment projects come along, that the residents themselves benefit from the job opportunities, and that is happening, and we hope to help it happen even more. And then just also thank you to City Council. CSRAP is still up and running robustly, and we have a number of families that have benefited mightily from that voucher assistance. So I just want to let you know that these policies actually do manifest on the ground, and people actually do benefit from them. So thank you very much.
So, bootstrapping off of Councilor Payne and Alex's discussion, and Alex and the new hack and the timelines and such. So, as we wrap up our business, what can this body or members of it push out to the new hack and cap that's helpful? What do we want to say? What do we want to, how do we want to hand this off? Is there a handoff?
Yeah, I don't think there is any formal handoff. As you know, like the city attorney said, this is we have to start over,
Right?
Because we had a discussion with her. So what I would recommend, if there are anything, because if we have a new hack, we're going to have orientation for them. And then we can tell them where everything is, and then what the expectations are, and then they can take it from there. However, in your wisdom at this point, is there anything you think you need to let them know or tell them this is this? I think you are at will to do that.
So, yeah, I guess it's possible there might be some continuity of membership to the hack in general. Counselor, is it your impression that there are enough hack applications of likely members that it'll stand up a quorum, or are we still short?
My concern is that there won't be a quorum when you look at the designated seats on the new hack, where members have to meet certain qualifications. That's my concern. So one thing is, if we do end up in that situation, everybody just reaching out to their networks if there's anyone they know, who fits the new hack board requirements, who may be interested in serving, and trying to convince them that it is a worthwhile use of their time.
Yeah,
Are
well,
we sorry to interrupt, but are we considering extending the deadline to make sure we can capture that? I don't know what the deadline currently is, or did
It was just, I believe it was December 9th. And my expectation is that we're going to have to extend it.
Okay.
So it kind of sounds like there won't be a new hack to hand off to until you hopefully get new applications in, or are you going to change the structure of it to accept different applicants if that doesn't work? And if it doesn't stand up next month, like, what is this body still in existence? What is the actual plan there, particularly for CAF allocations?
Well, I think in my discussion with the city attorney and the deputy city manager, Mr. Sanders, he's gonna have a further discussion with Lisa, and then dovetail that with city council, discuss with the city council, and then take it from there.
so Lisa's stance on this is that until the council actually reconstitutes and starts appointing people, we still exist as a body. That was her opinion, and that we can continue to act until one is actually established. And I think everyone's hope, including Mr. Sanders, was that they'd have enough so that council could at least produce a quorum, but that it would be available in January. That sounds like it's not happening, but hopefully by the end of the first quarter at the very latest. And frankly, I think it needs to happen faster than that. It needs to happen in January, I think.
And when are CAF allocations going to be decided? Like, what's the timeline on that?
I don't have it close here, but the current hop will probably finish all the review process in January. And then we're hoping that in terms of the CAF, we get it done before February, because that will be the next.
Right. Housekeeping note, communications, Remy, Dan Rosenzweig is having trouble accessing.
Okay,
So just to advise.
So
Yes,
I
sir.
think I'm a little confused potentially in terms of, because the original, one of the purposes of deconstituting this body and reconstituting two new separate bodies was to create that firewall between those who are reviewing applications and those who are advising on policy. So I had sort of thought that what I heard Michael say was that the quorum related to the equivalent of the policy body was what there was insufficient applications. But did I misunderstand that? Is it more that there's not enough applicants for the advisory body on the funding side?
Or
is it
both?
I don't think, yeah, there are limited applications submitted. Just like I said, the deputy city manager intends to discuss with the city council next on the status of everything, and then provide the next steps in terms of going forward.
I say. So, okay, so I guess depending on how we schedule this, it's possible that this group might have a remit in January, and it's February when we actually retire, but we'll see. But I do hope this transition can be picked up and we can accelerate the appointment schedule. I know that in terms of controlling entropy, that council likes to do this in a sort of regimented way of appointing the boards and commissions in stated periods, but we may have to blow that up, I guess. I mean, I don't know what else to do at that point, but yes. Okay, all, please put forth go forth and corral people who you think might be good for this. I do know, I think, you know, there were a couple of people on this body who made application for the new one, but there's only 2 spots for housing providers, I think, on the new hack. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so, I mean, yeah.
So if we did corral folks, are the current, even though the deadline has passed, is the link that's on the website still active and can they still apply even though it hasn't been extended, or what should we?
I have to cross check that with the city clerk, because it's not, this office is not responsible for appointment. The city clerk office coordinates that, and then the recommendation goes to the city council. So I have to check with them.
Then can I make a request that when the decision is made, either to extend or otherwise, just to communicate back out to this email list so that we can be sure to spread the word?
Definitely.
Thank you, sir.
And I just want to be really clear, like, if there isn't a new CAF committee constituted by the time we're doing allocations, that is going to come back to our subcommittee. Like, there's going to be some process for allocating.
So,
Yeah.
Not to step on Alex, but from an institutional history point of view, and Alex can correct me, there is no definitive council statement that the hack has to handle the allocations. We just did in absence of anyone else doing it. Similarly, there is no exact, if you read at the LIHTC evaluation subcommittee or evaluations, which is not a hack body, but was in Department of Neighborhood Services, Neighborhood Development, that body also is not, the word is there must be one of 3 people, at least 3 people. That's it. So I don't think we have a clear answer, Lori. We can do it, or, you know, some sort of interim ad hoc. I really, really would love, however, to have the permanent body in late winter at the latest, so they can stand up and do it. Because as you pointed out yesterday, Rory, you know, we need a unified system for this. And at this point, it's almost, we're almost graduating to the point of, and I don't want to be cavalier, but what exactly that system is may not be as critically important as just having a system that we can all point to and build, or else we're just going to keep spinning wheels here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I want to see this new body stand up as soon as possible. I just want to make sure that this next round doesn't like fall into some black hole somewhere and allocations happen without some real process.
Right. Yeah, I think that's sort of my point too. But I'd vastly prefer that we have the new permanent entity at least trying to cut its teeth on this, than just, you know, Alex and several community members and, you know, a few members of the hack and a couple of staff members cramming into a conference room to pull this together. So, yes, sir. Well, I guess we can get somebody back on that. Any other thoughts on, I mean, is there anything that we can do? I guess there's not much we can do, Alex, to help facilitate that besides standing up and saying, hey, can somebody do something about this?
Well, for me, I'm not looking at it because historically, I think I understand the allocation and the process and what have you. So for me, I'm not looking at it. It's true that we don't have adequate number of people that applied for the committees, but like I said, the city manager is deputy city manager is going to discuss with the city council, and then I'll get a feedback on what we are going to do next. Putting people together to review the applications. I think we can do that. People who can reflect transparency and what have you. You know, so if we need assistance, once I hear back from the deputy city manager, you know, I'll let you guys know.
Okay, sounds good. So anybody have any thoughts on what we want to say to this new hack, if anything? Or what we do want to hand off to them?
Yes.
Would you care to share them?
So one thing is in 2014, the hack worked very hard on creating housing policy number 1, and the city adopted it. But I don't know I don't know where it lives, and I don't know whether anybody sees it with any regularity. And so I think just making sure that the next hack has that housing policy 1 and updates it as appropriate. So that's one thing. And then there are the 2 pieces of unfinished business, at least from the policy subcommittee, that, you know, I would love to hand off to the hack and have them, you know, see if they can't land them. And one of them was the Housing Choice Mobility Fund, which was our effort to try to address the challenge that people have where they can afford the rent, but they don't have security deposit. And so they can't get into a home that they otherwise could afford. And so the Housing Choice Mobility Fund was an effort to stand up a fund and a process for allowing landlords to take advantage of that. And that just kind of has been sitting there for quite some time. And then finally, at the request of Jason Vandiver and others, we were asked to give our ideas on partial tax exemptions to help with people affording housing in the city. And we came up with a number of recommendations. We didn't quite get a final recommendation. And then we stopped meeting. So, you know, those 2 pieces of unfinished business, as well as just making sure they're aware of Housing Policy 1, are things that I would recommend that they take up.
Right. Well, of course, we are holding a policy subcommittee meeting on the heels of this, where you, sir, will be looking at those documents and we'll be running through them. So that starts in just a couple of minutes.
Oh,
So, Remy, were you able to communicate with Dr. Rosenzweig about getting in here?
I sent him a new invite to his email, so.
All right, I will
Got it.
alert him to that. Which I just did. Okay. So, any other matters you think we should discuss here?
Nothing to discuss, but I see Ian Baxter in the attendees, and just wanted to shout out that the Regional Housing Partnership is putting together the Regional Housing Summit, which will happen on March 24th of next year. Just wanted to plug that, but nothing to discuss.
Right. Oh, and Elise is over on the attendee side too. So that, sorry, we should have promoted you. Sorry. Elise,
Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
I was just going to say one item of business might be if we want to have this body meet again in January, it might be good to figure out what time we want to choose or which Wednesday, just so we all have it on our calendar. Or if you want to keep the same pattern, or
Yeah, well, yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the usual is the 3rd. Our exception is December, because there's no point in meeting on the 3rd Wednesday of December, because, you know, there's no point in meeting on the 3rd Wednesday of December. But yeah, I agree. I think that's right. Elise, welcome to this side of the meeting.
Yeah, thank you. We have having some internet connectivity issues, so I'm going to leave video off to try and preserve my bandwidth. But yeah, thanks for having us.
Great. Anything to update from your part of the universe?
Nope, we continue to be plugging along. We've got a number of ERP and rehab projects that we're closing out and trying to get people settled before we get any heavy winter weather. Get a lot of needs still in the city, but making do with what we can.
What we can. I've never heard that before. Great. Okay. Well, Ridge, as I mentioned, those 2 items, what used to be called the landlord risk reduction and the tax documents are there and waiting for us to address in the policy committee. What I would suggest, since it appears that we may still have one more time at bat here in January, that we just say we may have one more time at bat in January, but pending word from Alex and Sam. But I would look in this policy subcommittee meeting to run through that stuff and see what we can pass on. Yes, sir. Sunshine, the land bank. So the update on the land bank is that that is been a topic of discussion in staff. It has on council. I've actually spoken with a couple of council members on that. Yes, we should include that for an update and a handoff. I am entertaining the notion that if we can just dust off the existing ordinance, clean it up for what has changed in the last couple of years, we can actually move it forward. But there's some question about there's a philosophical question about whether they want to establish that or piggyback it off the CRHA. I'm on one side of that, but there are others on the other. But yes, I agree. So land bank and those other two matters. Anything else we should discuss at this point, or should we just sort of hand it off to Ridge and let's look through these things? And I'll have public comment. Ian, any comments? There you are.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I just, thanks to Councilor Payne for plugging our event. Yeah, we're really looking forward to that housing summit in March 2023. On the land bank, I just wanted to let everyone know that the Regional Housing Partnership, as a part of its strategic plan, included a land bank feasibility study that we're gonna hopefully access Virginia housing funding in the next few years to accomplish on behalf of the region. So just wanted to throw that out there. And obviously, you know, y'all's timeline might be different for the city itself, but that is something that multiple stakeholders across the region have been interested in looking into. So we were going to shepherd that process on behalf of the partnership. But thanks for letting
Well,
me
I'd love to talk to you further about that, as the existing ordinance actually has an expansion piece in it. So the existing proposed ordinance that is sort of lying, growing mold on it, does have an expansion piece that is designed to be able to spread to the county and then to the region.
Yeah, and the idea itself is even pre-nascent. You know, it's something that we've talked about with absolutely no specificity, but just something that's been identified as a key regional investigation, I suppose, is how I would describe it.
Right.
I just wanna add, in terms of regional land bank study, when you guys put the scope of work for whoever is going to do the study, how it's going to be funded needs to be included, because it needs to be clearly spelled out, you know, who is going to contribute what, whether it's going to be based on per capita contribution from the member local governments and things like that, you know, because without consideration and resolution of the financial arrangement in terms of funding, usually, unless there is a source of funding from somewhere, usually regional entities, they tend to have problem in terms of implementation. So I just want to throw that idea out there for consideration.
Yeah, well, good point, Alex. Of course, the fortunate thing about standing up a land bank is that it's dirt cheap to actually start. The question is, how much money do you need to keep it going? I mean, starting a land bank essentially is pass an ordinance, spend $100 to form a Virginia non-stock corporation, get it made to be a nonprofit, and you have a land bank. So $100 plus postage. But indeed, we need a little more than that to keep it rolling beyond the tax revenue from the properties it acquires. No, I intended to be a pun. Rich, I did. Okay. Any other business here as we wrap this up? I know this wasn't a highly structured meeting. It wasn't intended to be, but we were just trying to see where we were and what we needed to move forward. And if there isn't, what I would propose is that we adjourn this and a handoff to Ridge so we can discuss these two documents.
And was there a separate link for the policy subcommittee? Because I got a little bit confused with I think I got 2 Zoom invites, one for noon and one for 1.
Yeah, there is. I set up 2 separate meetings. So yeah.
So do we
have
need to
to
sign
clear
out
this
of this one and sign into the new one?
Correct. Yeah.
All right. So goodbye all, and we'll see you in just a second.